She stood before the court, holding the evidence that could ruin the most powerful judge's career. The room froze as the footage played, the judge, smiling, accepting bribe money from politicians. Her heart raced. But what happened next will shock even the most seasoned observers. Let's start from the beginning. Jasmine Bellamy, a 38-year-old black woman, stepped into the courtroom with a quiet, unwavering confidence. She wasn't just an attorney. She was a force in the world of criminal defense, a woman who had earned her place at the top. As the state's leading defense lawyer, she had handled some of the most complex cases. Yet today, she was confronted with a different challenge, not in the form of a criminal, but in the form of a system that sought to dismiss her. The case she was tasked with was one of the most dangerous and high stakes she had ever encountered. A massive embezzlement scandal threatened to expose the deepest layers of corruption among the state's most powerful political figures, shaking the very foundation of the judicial system. But as she walked into the courtroom, she quickly realized that the opposition wasn't just a group of corrupt politicians. It was the very structure that had long maintained their power. Judge Walter Carmichael, an older man whose years on the bench had earned him an air of unshakable authority, sat with his back slightly hunched, flipping through the case file. His eyes met Jasmine's for only a brief second, a mere flicker of acknowledgement, before his gaze dropped back to the paperwork in front of him. She wasn't just a woman to him. She was a reminder of how the rules of the game were changing, something he wasn't willing to entertain. "Miss Bellamy," he said, his voice laced with a cold, dismissive tone. "This case is beyond your expertise. We'll proceed without your input. Thank you." The words hit her like a slap. For a brief moment, she stood frozen. The sting of his condescension, the challenge to her credibility, was palpable. But Jasmine wasn't one to flinch. She kept her composure, her eyes steely with determination. She knew the truth. He, and the people like him, weren't prepared for someone like her. Her success was an anomaly to them, a disruption to the comfortable world they'd built. Yet Jasmine had never needed their approval. She had risen to the top, not by bending to the system, but by breaking through it. The courtroom, filled with high-profile figures who believed the law bent for them, suddenly felt small. But Jasmine didn't mind. She had all the space she needed to make her mark. As the trial unfolded without her, Jasmine took her place in the back of the courtroom, quietly observing from the sidelines. Despite being pushed into the background, her mind was a whirlwind of analysis. Every argument, every shred of evidence. She could see the connections, the gaps, the lies. No one in the room understood the case as she did. No one had the depth of knowledge, the attention to detail, or the relentless drive that she brought to every case she touched. Outside the courtroom, whispers began to circulate. The judge's decision to sideline Jasmine was raising eyebrows, and speculation spread like wildfire. People who had worked with her, those who knew the kind of lawyer she was, started to wonder what was really going on. Rumors surfaced that Judge Carmichael had his reasons for dismissing the one person capable of cracking open the case. And Jasmine knew exactly why. Her rise had come at a cost. Her reputation for uncovering uncomfortable truths had made powerful enemies, enemies who feared what she might expose. Then, it happened. The first piece of evidence, the one that could change the entire trial, emerged. A document, a key that could unlock the entire case, landed on the table. Jasmine's pulse quickened. This was it, the moment she had been waiting for. She couldn't let it slip away. The stakes were too high, and the corrupt system too deep. She stood up from her seat, the weight of the decision heavy in her chest. She approached the bench, her movements deliberate, each step calculated. Her presence, despite being dismissed, was undeniable. "I have crucial evidence that could exonerate the defendant," she said, her voice soft, but brimming with quiet authority. Judge Carmichael barely acknowledged her, his eyes still fixed on his papers. "I've made my decision. You may leave now." The sting of his words hit her, but she didn't flinch. Her jaw tightened, but she kept her composure. This wasn't just about her pride or ego. This was bigger than that. It wasn't the usual dismissal she had faced countless times in her career, as a woman and as a black attorney. This was something more deliberate, something deeper. This wasn't just a personal slight. It was an active attempt to obstruct justice, and Jasmine would not let it stand. Jasmine's decision to fight back wasn't about ego or pride. It was about something far more important: the truth. The very foundation of the system she had spent her career fighting to uphold was being twisted, manipulated by powerful forces with no regard for justice. She couldn't, in good conscience, stand by and watch it all crumble. The following day, Jasmine set her plan into motion. With the kind of precision that had earned her respect in the courtroom, she began to work behind the scenes. She called in favors, tapped into her extensive network, and used every legal maneuver at her disposal. It wasn't easy, and it wasn't quick, but Jasmine was relentless. She had never backed down from a challenge, and this was no different. In the shadows of the courthouse, she gained access to confidential documents, files that were supposed to remain hidden, buried deep under layers of bureaucracy. And then, there were the tapes. Secret recordings locked away, never meant to see the light of day. As she sifted through the evidence, one piece stood out, a revelation that would send shockwaves through the entire legal community. The tapes exposed something that would change everything: a direct, undeniable connection between Judge Carmichael and the very politicians involved in the embezzlement scheme she had been assigned to expose. This wasn't just a smoking gun. It was the damning evidence that would tear the entire case wide open. It was the foundation upon which the truth would stand, undeniable and irrefutable. When Jasmine walked back into that courtroom, the weight of what she held in her hands was palpable. She had uncovered something far more dangerous than anyone could have imagined, and she knew it was time to bring it into the light. The moment she presented the tapes, the room went still. The judge, who had once sat with such an air of superiority, now looked rattled. His smug confidence, which had so easily dismissed her before, shattered in an instant. The web of lies he had carefully spun around himself unraveled, piece by piece. In front of everyone, those who had supported him, those who had turned a blind eye, the truth was laid bare. The corruption was exposed, and there was no going back. Jasmine stood before the courtroom, the eyes of the world on her. It wasn't just a victory for her. It was a victory for justice. As Judge Carmichael was led out of the courtroom in handcuffs, his once stoic face now a mask of disbelief, Jasmine allowed herself a moment to breathe. The state's embezzlement ring was dismantled, and the power structures that had long been in place were shaken. Jasmine had done what was necessary, not just for her career, but for the people who had been overlooked, manipulated, and silenced. As she walked out of the courtroom, her head held high, Jasmine knew this moment wasn't just her triumph. It was a symbol that justice could prevail, even when the odds were stacked against you. The system might try to dismiss you, but it could never erase the truth. And for the first time in her life, Jasmine Bellamy felt truly seen.